I'm Daniele Metilli from ISTCNR, which is the National Research Council of Italy. And I'm here with Beatrice Melis from the University of Pisa. We are presenting a work about Wikidata-based narratives for research and education. We start from this quote by philosopher Charles Taylor, who said, a basic condition of making sense of ourselves is that we grasp our lives in a narrative. We believe this is true. Narratives are central to our experience of reality. And for this reason, they are found in every form of human creative expression, such as literature, art, media, music, etc. And narratives are also often found on the web. However, currently, there is no standard form or format to represent narratives digitally, and this is the subject of much investigation because on the web, generally, narratives are represented using natural language text or maybe videos or other ways, but not in a structured, machine-readable way, so they can be interpreted easily by humans, but not really be understood by machines. My group at ISTCNR, at my institute, has been working on a formal model to represent narratives, which is an ontology to represent narratives. This is our website, dearnarratives.eu. The website of the project, and this down here is our latest publication on the subject, which is probably the most complete publication on the ontology. This ontology is based on semantic web standards, and in particular on a reference ontology called SciDoc-CRM, which is a standard in the field of cultural heritage, also digital libraries, museums. It is quite widely used. Our definition of narrative is that a narrative is a network of events defined by a narrator through a natural language text or other medium. So there is event 1, event 2, event 3 connected together. And then each event is endowed with some factual aspects. So, for example, time, place, participants. There can also be objects and concepts that are related to the event. But a narrative also has several levels. The fabula level, which is the sequence of events in chronological order. Event 1, event 2, event 3. But there is also the plot, which is the same events, but in a different order, depending on the choices of the narrator. If you think about, for example, flashbacks in a novel or in a movie, okay? And then there is the narration, which is the concrete level, the concrete expression of the plot through a text or a video or another format. This was just to give you a general idea because the ontology is quite complex, but on the basis of it, we built a tool to construct and visualize, or I would say create and visualize narratives. It is used by a human user, so it is not an automatic tool that just builds narratives. And we leveraged Wikidata to build this tool. It was presented, it is reported in this publication, and it works like this. A user operates the tool, and the tool imports data from Wikidata, and then I will show you the output. This is a research tool, so not publicly available at the moment. We plan to release it as open source later. But let's see the interface of the tool. So this is a very basic interface, not very fancy, as you can see, but it is functional. So we have here some Wikidata entities, and here we have an area where the user inserts data about each event. These entities can be drag and dropped here and to populate each event. Then the events are saved to a timeline down here. So it is quite easy to use. The events are color-coded depending on their class. These are not Wikidata classes, but the classes of our ontology. They correspond to the classes of our ontology. So the user selects the subject of the narrative, step 1. Step 2, there is a query to the Wikipedia API. We found that this was a better way to find the relevant entities. So we look at the Wikipedia page about the subject. We look at the linked pages to find the related entities. Then we use the Wikidata query service through Sparkle to retrieve all entities. Then we filter them. We map them to our ontology. So this reminds me of what was said at the end of the previous session, that the Wikidata model is a bit different from traditional ontology models, and we face this too. And then the entities are displayed in the tool for the user. The output is visualizations. So there is a timeline visualization, which is the main one, based on timeline.js, the timeline.js library. Then we also have graph-based visualizations of the two kinds, and also table visualizations. We built with this tool 4 case studies, which are at this address. Okay, the biography of Dante Alighieri, the Italian poet, the biography of Gustav Klimt, the artist. We did an interesting study, let's say, with importing data from Wikidata, but also from Europeana digital library, which contains many works of Klimt. The history of the giant squid, this was done by a computational biologist. It is very interesting. And the history of climate change. Finally, there is a new one which has just been published. It is about with a different approach. It mixes literary and historical perspectives to narrate a poem called La Primavera Italiana, an Italian poem by Eugenio Montale. The topic is a very grim and tragic time in Italian history, which is the fascist period, of course, from an anti-fascist perspective, which was the perspective of Eugenio Montale. We believe this is very important to study this period, and our work can help with this. Also can be used, for example, by students in high schools or universities to approach this topic. This case study will now be presented by the author of the narrative, who is Beatrice Melis from the University of Pisa. Thank you. So I will stop. Okay.
Okay, do you hear me? Do you see my screen with the presentation?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Okay. So, good day to all of you. I am Beatrice Melis, and thanks to Daniele, you have been really clear. I graduated in April 2021 in Digital Humanities at University of Pisa, and today I would like to present you my first thesis project, as Daniele said you a few minutes ago, that is entitled La Primavera Italiana by Eugenio Montale, a literary criticism essay with digital storytelling tools. As a first issue, I would like to introduce you to the work, so to the thesis project, which is a literary criticism analysis of the poem La Primavera Italiana by Eugenio Montale, which was written between 1939 and 1946. Eugenio Montale was an Italian poet who died in 1981, and he lived in the Second World War period as an anti-fascist intellectual. So he wrote a very large amount of poems about the Second World War and the fascist period, and also the La Primavera Italiana is a poem in this regard. The main theme is the visit of Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini in Florence that occurred on the 9th of May 1938 as a unique historical and political event. The aim of my analysis was to use a critical method to investigate both the informative and emotional web that composes the poem. And furthermore, this poem is known to be really filled with chronological, literary, and historical references within the verses. So overall, the analysis that I have made on the poem focuses on the fact that I would give to the reader a more evocative experience of the verses of the poem. So the main goal that came next was about making the contents available. So we had to switch from a literary critic's essay to a digital product. And we decided to use the storytelling as the narrative technique to have a computing support. The storytelling technique allowed us to enrich the poetic explanation by the integration with multimedia, which is a very important part. But on the other way, we could use various types of format that are extremely interesting to study humanistic domain subject, and we will see later. I would like to present you the work as a 3-steps narrative building process. The first step was about the definition of the events that describe the story. So I was the storyteller, and I studied and analyzed the poem very deeply in order to outline a series of events that had to be narrated for me to describe the poem La Primavera Italiana. I selected a total of 19 events. So to me, La Primavera Italiana could be narrated by the definition of 19 events. Some of these describe a historical and political contextualization, both of the poem and the biography of the poet Eugenio Montale during the period of interest, which is the period between the 20s and the 50s of the 20th century. Secondly, I have selected the events that were more suitable for me to describe the thematic content and the evocative aspects of the lyric. Next, we have the second step, which is the most important for us today, which is the one that comprehends the so-called narrative population. So once all the events have been chosen, all the 19 events, each of them must be defined according to some fields that can describe each event at the best. So I use the narrative building and visualization tool that Daniele introduced you before to define all my 19 events according to some preset fields, such as the event title, the start date, the end date, a textual description of the event, and so more. But there is another important one, which is the one about the entities. The entities include everything that come into play into an event. So we talk about people, we talk about objects, we talk about places, concepts, works, organization, and others, just as when a story is told verbally. They are a fundamental part of the process of creating events because they are representing of a knowledge that once united composes the final story. So we have to say that data populate events as well as actors populate a story. So all these entities have to be researched and inserted into the narrative building and visualization tool, which starts the process of importing data from Wikidata so that they can include it in the event definition. I would like to give you an example of a main event, and I chose the event about the visit of Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini in Florence. So at the extreme left, you see that there is the event title. Then there is the start date, which is the 9th of May 1938, and there is the same as the end date because the event started and ended on the same day. Then we have just a little part of the textual description of the event that story tells the journey of Mussolini and Hitler in Florence. And then we have the entities. You can see that these events comprehend entities such as people like Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini, but also leading entities about the places like Florence or Palazzo Vecchio, Pitti Palace, or Galleria Uffizi, and then also about works like Simon Boccanegra, which is a work by Giuseppe Verdi, which was presented at the theater of Florence the day when Hitler and Mussolini come to visit the theater. So you see that this is a very important part because entities and therefore data represent the backbone of the story. Importing data is a very delicate passage, and the main focus must be on selecting the entities involved that can best describe the individual event, so that the story can be narrated in the most complete and faithful way possible. So we just open a parenthesis about the importance of Wikidata in the event definition phase. Probably you all know that Wikidata can claim a very impressive amount of data from every domain of knowledge, which is why I've always been able to describe the events of my story in the best way possible. Nevertheless, the Wikidata collaborative policy allowed me to create the entities when they were missing. So if there was an entity that was missing, I just created it, and this was a very valuable advantage during my work. Now I would like to show you also the final product of my work, the final result that corresponds to the third and final passage, which was the one about making the digital storytelling available for users. We immediately felt the need to create a homepage to present the digital narration and to be as immersive as possible. We wanted it to be an intuitive point of access to the whole story. For this reason, the page, which is published with Creative Commons license, welcomes the user with a brief contextualization of the work, and then there is the poem, the verses. Moving the pointer all over the text allows to present the event only in part, highlighting the title of a portion of a textual description, and then by clicking on it, the user can explore the individual event in all its aspects and can take a path through the entities. You see that there is the description, then the sources, and then also the entities. By moving the pointer, you can see the description of the event, which is the one that is on Wikidata. And then there are also the digital objects. And you can move with the arrows to the previous or the next event, and you can take a path all over the events. But if the user prefers to navigate with a semantic approach, it just can go back and start the narration again, as I showed you at the beginning of this slide. So the conclusion, this is how La Primavera Hitleriana became a story to be told using events and data. You probably know that Digital Humanities Project concentrates about having the things to say and finding the right tools to say them. I must say that working on this project was really instructive and stimulating to me, and I really hope that this case study could represent a possible way forward in order to be able to faithfully represent the humanistic and literary heritage through data. And in conclusion, we must remember to never abandon the need to maintain a valuable human and historical memory, like this poet and this poem, La Primavera Hitleriana, represent to all of us. That's all for me. We thank you for your attention. These are our email addresses, and this is the link to the main project, Narrative in Digital Libraries. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting. There are a bit of questions. I see that Daniele is answering them already in the Etherpad.
Yes, I was,
yeah, you still have 6 minutes if you want, so you can answer them also. Do you want me to keep recording or stop the recording now?
No, you can keep recording if you want. It's
okay. Right.
So yes, one question was about the import of the model narrative into Wikidata, so the final product. This is something that we have thought about, how to give back to the community, but this is not very easy to do due to the nature of our ontology, which is different from the Wikidata ontology. And so, but still we intend, if possible, to do something about this. Then there is a question about intellectual property rights, which is also very interesting question, because we work mostly with, until now we have worked mostly with the historical narratives from past times. So there is a lot of content that is not that is in the public domain and not presently under copyright. So also by using Wikidata, but also Wikipedia, partly some text from Wikipedia and some images from Wikimedia Commons, we were able to construct complex teams while maintaining an open license. We use Creative Commons attribution share alike. But this is an issue that becomes much more important when looking at contemporary events, for example, or if you want to do kind of narrative that is based on a text under copyright. Also, there is a question about traditional tales, multiple versions of the same narrative. This is also a very interesting research question that has not yet been explored. So how to have different versions of the same narrative, different narrations of the same events, because it is very difficult to understand when two events are the same, when two narratives are the same. So yes, but this we have thought a lot about this, and we would like to in the future to explore this topic about comparison and integration of several narratives. Also, there is a question about Wikibased. We know about Wikibased. When we started this project, we did not actually consider it at the beginning, because we already had a model that was based on, let's say, an architecture that was based on base graph directly. So it is the same graph database that is used by Wikidata, but we use it directly with our ontology model, which is different. But yes, this could be an interesting approach also to then make something that is better integrated with Wikidata itself, or still. Yes, I think this could be explored in the future. And also there is a question for Beatrice. Yes, sorry, I'm answering all questions, but Beatrice, if you want to answer the last question, it says, how was the acceptance of this way to perform a critical version of a poem in your institution from the point of view of valid scientific communication contribution?
I don't think I see it. Could you please, Daniele, read it another time, please?
What? What did you say, Beatrice? I didn't understand.
If you want to read me another time. Okay, so yeah, I see it now.
Okay, it is here in the chat. Sorry.
Yeah, Actually, it was seen as from the beginning as a real challenging study, because my work was cared from my literature professor, which is from University of Pisa, Ida Campeggiani, and she immediately said that the study was really challenging, but in the end she was very happy with the work, because I always maintained the importance of taking information from scientific contributors. So it went real good in the end.
So thank you very much again. I would, if there aren't any questions, I would like to close this session now and stop the recording.
I think there is just one question about language barriers. This project is multilingual because the text of the poem is in Italian and the text that we published about the poem is in English, because we wanted to reach a wider public. And we use the English Wikipedia for the initial step of the import of the entities in the tool, but the tool is also able to import from other languages, so this is not a significant issue there. But yes, this is also one of the advantages of Wikidata, that it supports practically all languages, and this is very good for us. Thank you.